where I want to start the conversation was what we were just discussing about, being a Latina in business, kind of like this idea of like being a minority within a minority, right? And how rare that is, but also how important that it becomes to, band together instead of competing with each other. So kind of curious, I would love to kind of start there and kind of hear your thoughts about how does that make you feel? How do you approach that? And, when you meet other Latinas that are trying to start businesses or the ones that don't even have a business yet, but they feel like they can't do it. How do you help those people?
When we first started our business, we being my partner and myself, we never really thought of ourselves as entrepreneurs at all. We always thought, I'm always going to be an employee of someone. Yeah. And I think that is the unfortunate mentality that we have because, it's not necessarily that you think like, it's not that I don't aspire to want more, but just the whole, visionary, when you see the vision in the big picture, it's hard to picture yourself up there because, okay, either you're undocumented, things that, were issues for us is, okay, how can we start? Do we get a loan? Do we have the capital? Am I going to get a loan because, I'm first generation? At least for me, it was always hard to know, like, am I good enough, And can I, make this possible? And so back in 2020, we started our business during COVID. So one, it was already like, man, restaurants are closing. Is this something that we want to do? How can I create that generational wealth? Because, my parents barely bought a house. And so, thankfully we took that leap. But I think as I've gotten into meeting other women within the business, like I have a really good friend and she is Honduran. So another Latinx woman within the community, and she's not in the food and beverage industry, but she is super cool. She does custom shoes, and all the time, sometimes, for example, there was one time that she's married to a white guy, and this white guy is super nice, awesome, he's great, but it's hard to think like, sometimes we've had conversations and she's like, oh, but like, do I count as a brown business, because am I brown enough? And, I'm married because of her husband. And to me, I'm like, that's such an interesting thing because, I'm partnered with a Mexican man. And obviously to me, I'm like, okay, we're, brown people. And I definitely am like, okay, I'm a brown business. But for her, it's hard to say, am I brown enough to be in this business, be in any business? And I'm always like, yes. So I think that's like super important to, always think like you're still at a disadvantage compared to, white women, compared to white men, you're always going to be at a disadvantage, unfortunately. And I think you can say like, oh, I've never experienced, specific situations where I've been put in like that. But honestly, I think that there are lots of times that we get put into these kinds of situations where it's not, on purpose. Like someone may say something and it's not necessarily on purpose. Like they're trying to be biased or they're trying to be malicious, but they say things that make you feel like, man, am I good enough?
Yeah.
As a brown person.
From my experience, I always feel the same way. It's like, am I good enough? Am I brown enough? I'm a whitewashed Mexican. Shit, I've been called out. If somebody called me out once for my past and white privilege, I was like, what the fuck does that even mean? But then you kind of think, I was like, yeah, you're not wrong, right? Like I am a light-skinned Mexican. So all those things always brew. But I guess my problem is like, why is it that I don't know about you, but I always feel like the most hate I always get is from Latinos. Like the most, like just the most friction that I encounter, the most like drama that I encounter. Sometimes I'm like, it's my own fucking people. Like, why do we do this to ourselves? And it, like you said, it may not even come from a malicious point anymore. It's probably something that's already built into the psyche. And it's just like we lash out because of our insecurities and fears, and all this oppression has been kind of, like shoved down our throats. How do we fix it though? Like, how do you approach that with other females and other Latinas?
Yeah, so one thing I think that has really opened up my eyes to a lot of kind of these issues that we're having is co-hosting Let's Talk Women. which has been such a great resource where women, within the food and beverage industry meet together. And there are a lot, like our whole intention is to be diverse, to be, have the same values. It's important for us to know, like, okay, brown and black lives matter. And that's exactly why we did certain things intentionally. So, like, for example, we did our March dinner back this year. That was our first event ever. And there are more than 13 cities that are a part of Let's Talk Women. And we're already internationally. We're starting 2 different chapters, within London and Canada. Rohini Day really is an amazing woman. But really what that showed us is like, okay, are things that we can do that are, no bullshit? Like, what are things that we can do that are intentional? So our biggest thing, for example, that everybody used this platform Talk. And the Milwaukee chapter specifically said, we're going to use Cash Drop because your whole team is basically brown, black, diverse. Like, that's the kind of stuff that we want to align ourselves with. Why? Because the thing is like, you'd never see that. I mean, sure. I cannot tell you of companies like that are, 50% plus more diverse.
They don't exist.
They don't. And I don't know why. I mean, exactly. Like, I'm not sure why. And even within Let's Talk Women, I would say like the majority are white women, which is super great. I'm glad that we, have found a group that we can, start to be inclusive. But our main thing is like, how can we get more diversity within this group? Because one, we're definitely out there, diversity exists, but I don't know what it is that it's like harder for us to like get those people involved. It's hard to get resources out there. One thing I think that this whole networking word is so hard for, I think, sometimes minorities to understand because nobody teaches you this. You don't, my parents hardly ever, not because they didn't want to, but because they just don't know. They don't know what school is like in the U.S., Basically, it was kind of like, okay, well, we expect you to graduate and go to a college. How you get there, that's on you.
Yeah.
And that I think is like, no one teaches you, I think in most brown and black families, unfortunately, how to network, how to do things, how to build a resume.
It's because we grew up in the Hunger Games, right? Like, we've only ever grown up fighting for the one place available, the token Mexican, right? Yep. Like, and if it's not you, it's somebody else, and their success is at your expense, so you fight and you compare and then you compete. And we've never grown up in a society that's conducive to collaboration. And I feel like this is kind of part of the problem, what I was mentioning earlier. Like, we still kind of have the remnants of that, and we clench so bad to like talk bad or like, like feel that somebody else's success is at your expense. And that's the most toxic mentality that any of us could ever have, let alone like Latinos, right? Like, so kind of like taking it back to your story, like you've had such a great growth story, launching the pandemic in the middle of like, we're probably launching a restaurant was probably the worst idea in the world, right? But you did it, and look at you now. So I'm curious, like, what's that journey been for you? Like, what are some of the failures, but ultimately the learnings, that you've had that have made you a better entrepreneur, a better mother, a better, person overall? What's that been for you?
The thing is I don't know what I don't know. And unfortunately, like, it's not like I went to school to start my own business. I never thought that I would. And literally from like the outsourcing that I think no one tells you that you have to really do or focus on, like, having a good accountant, there's lots of stuff that like you don't realize that like goes into taxes, which seems like trivial, but it's so important in a business that you're like, okay, check that off the box. Second of all is like having capital to even like work with and think like, in the beginning it was very like, Marco, my partner, had quit his job. He was full-time making, decent money. And now we're just surviving on my paycheck, and we have a kid and we have bills, and we're trying to start something in the middle of the pandemic, and you're barely making anything because obviously you're just starting out and you're going to be in the negative until you get into the positive. But right now it's so important, I think, to be on the ground floor. Like, I've met other entrepreneurs who really feel like, oh, well, we just started a business and, I don't have to be there because I'm the owner and, it'll just get done. But honestly, like, that mentality does not work.
Right.
I mean, you have to be there. Like, you're not going to get to where you want to be with other people leading your own business. And that's definitely the goal, for one day for you not to be there all the time. But I think that is the number one thing that people, like, think like, oh, like, you own a food truck, God, this just must be so easy, like, totally great, like, you can just, it's not even a restaurant, you can, like, close early, you could do whatever. But no, it's not like that at all. It's, Marco's either, shopping for the food, doing stuff, I'm doing all the admin stuff, doing events, working the truck, working full time, getting our daughter, back here, you're like me. There's never a break. There's never, downtime.
If you met another younger Marilupe that has an idea for concept and, like, it's kind of at the edge of, like, should I do it? Maybe I'm not good enough, right? Like, what would your advice be for somebody like that?
Man, if I could go back, I would say do it, like, now. Mm-hmm. Like, not, I'm 29 now, which I would say I would consider myself pretty young, but that's I really, yeah. I just wish that we would have done this, 10 years ago. When I was, 18, 19, I met Marco 10 years ago. We've been together for over 10 years. And I just think, like, I don't know what we did with our money back then, except, like, I mean, we had fun. It was great. Yeah. And it's nice to think about now, but I 100% would just do it now, do it, like.
It just begins by showing the ones that are doing it that it's possible. It's not going to be easy. And I feel like the first few layers will require a lot of hard work, sacrifice. There's no such thing as work-life balance when you start a business, particularly from the background that you and I come from. You just have to fucking do it.
Yeah.
Who were some of your bigger inspirations? Who are some of your bigger, role models when you were kind of getting started that kind of helped you actually believe that you could be that badass business owner?
Well, I would say funny, because when we started our business, myself and Marco, my partner, it was very much like him saying, we had some money because we were thinking about buying a house. And he was like, it was literally like a Monday or Tuesday. And he was like, there's this truck in Minnesota. Should I just, like, get it? Mm-hmm. We should just get it. And I was like, yeah, I guess. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Like, what else are we going to do, basically? And I think he was huge on that. And obviously, he's, the main sushi chef. We do sushi and ramen, boba on our food truck. And his story is super cool. He started as a dishwasher, did not go to high school, did not go to college. We just happened to meet and obviously now have been together. But even though we have two totally separate backgrounds, we're very different people, but really we have the same values and same goals. And I think he was someone that was like, we're just going to do it. Like, yeah, exactly how you said, like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. I have to, like, quit my job. And how are we going to, manage that? So to me, him saying, like, yep, we're all in this. And that really, I think, was the number one reason why I was so reassured that, okay, if we fail, we're failing together, but at least we can say we try to do this. And, if it sticks, like, it sticks. And obviously both of us worked hard to get it up and running, but I think Marco was, like, such a person that really motivates me to do what I do.
So obviously one of our big missions at Cash App is to support people's dreams, right? Like, and I said this at our last event, like, Cash App is really just a combination of people's dreams and hopes, right? Like, they work so hard day and night to build their dreams, build their businesses, and we're nothing without it. And that's why I've always been very conscious about the way that we build the business, the way that we make money, how we make money, So selfishly, I would like to hear a little bit about your experience with the platform.
Yes.
You know, you're one of our favorite merchants. You've been with us for a long time. I think Zocalo Food Truck Park obviously is a very special place in my heart because that's where we launched. Shout out to Chewy. What is your take on Cash App? How does it help, if at all, with your business? You know, how does it make you feel, you know, in terms of like how we make money with removing fees and stuff like that? What does that mean to you as a business owner that you're working to kind of get your business off the ground?
I'm like your number one plug. I swear. I always say, like, I swear I don't work for Cash Drop, but I just have to plug Cash Drop all the time. I mean, we were introduced to Cash Drop back when it, you know, was newer. I mean, I'm in this office now and it looks insane. Looks amazing. And not that it didn't back then, but it was, you guys had just started, obviously. And that's when I met Betsy. And honestly, when I first got into Cash Drop, I had obviously been in restaurant business and I've done, you know, other jobs with other POS systems. And it was by far one of the easiest systems to use. Everything mobile, everything on tablets. Where we were at Zocalo, there were no tickets because the Wi-Fi didn't get to us. And even up until this day, we only are like electric. We don't have any tickets come out. We don't have anything, like, it's all just tablet based. We have now run into doing pop-ups and we exclusively use Cash Drop. I've never once used a Square. Do I have a Square? I do. Is it in a box? Is it somewhere I don't know? It is, because I'll never use it. I mean, seriously, the more that I got to know Cash Drop, I was like, why would I ever want to use Square? Honestly, any other, you know, third-party POS system. My number one thing that I always have to say is, like, you will never get like a random person trying to help you, and you'll never be a number. Like, I can literally tell you people's names, like Betsy, Taylor, you know, the people that I constantly talk to when I need anything, you know, response 5 minutes at the most. If something is like going, I mean, there have been times where when we were first launching pop-ups and it was kind of at a simultaneous time, we had our main location at Zocalo, and then our third party, our second food truck was at a second location, or we had a pop-up going on. I mean, there was one day, for example, that there was 3 things going on at one time, and everything I could control everything from one phone. I could go from pop-up to the main location to the other pop-up. We all were simultaneously working. And I think when you have a system that works so seamlessly, that is like the number one thing that I just don't want to be frustrated with. And I'm not. I mean, by far best system. And in general, not just the system itself. I mean, I love the POS system. I love, you know, the help that you get, but number one thing is it just goes back to like my values. I'm going to choose a brown owned business, and like compared to anything else. And you know, I've seen with your Latino Renaissance, like the number one thing that I think constantly about other companies, they say like, oh yeah, we love diverse people. Oh yeah, here's like the subsidized cost because we want more brown and black people. And that's great. I think that that's great, but nobody, I mean, is really putting their money where their mouth is like you.
Thank you.
And I think that is 100% like why we'll always back Cash Drop. The real support of real people, like of people that I can really name. You know, not just like, here's your 1-800 number, call when you have help, and it's probably going to be a 24, 48-hour response. Like, it's real time. It's, you know, even just this, like you knowing who I am, that's like fucking cool. You're like a CEO, you know, that's badass. So just being here, it's like, okay, that's awesome. So yeah, I mean, I love being part of the Cash Drop family all the time. I mean, there's nothing better now with the whole, you know, make a dollar, net a dollar. That has tremendously helped, especially like now that we're in our slow season. You know, seeing your sales and knowing like, okay, this is what I'm bringing home, like the food costs, like all of that, you know, it's the same as, you know, when we're on some other platforms like DoorDash, Grubhub, you know, that kind of stuff. Like at one point, Marco was like, let's just get rid of it all because, I mean, yeah, you make sales through that sometimes, like for deliveries, but the amount of money you get is like a joke. Like it's not even worth it at that point to even like waste your time in doing it, you know? And with Cash Wrap, like everything has been like, how can we give back, you know, to the entrepreneurs? How can we get back to the business owners? And all that money, you know, instead of paying it to credit card fees, to whatever, you know, third party fees, that all goes back and gets reinvested into the business.
I'm very thankful for you. Thank you for sharing your story. You know, the common thread here is just perseverance and just like taking the plunge. I think that's like the theme. And I'm really excited for people to see and hear your story. I think it's going to be an amazing reaction. So thank you for being you. Keep doing it. Let us know any ways that we can be supportive. We really appreciate you and your business. And this is an awesome episode. And I think that's a wrap.